Hello, Des Moines Mom. My name is Kara, and I'm one of the co-owners of Des Moines Mom. And today we are joined with Vicki Wieben, who owns Bright Light Counseling, and we are thrilled to be able to do another Mental Health Monday series. In our conversation today is holiday stress and tips for being mindful and for keeping things in perspective. So, Vicki, if you could introduce yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, my name is Vicky Wieben, and I am a counselor in the Des Moines area. I own Bright Light Counseling, which is located in Johnston, right off of 86th Street. I specialize in working with children and families, and I also work a lot with women and who struggle with anxiety or depression, some of those kinds of things. So that's kind of a newer thing that I'm moving into more.
Right. I think, I learned recently, I was having a conversation with someone and I'm just like, what do you mean? Like people don't just operate on like this low level of constant anxiety? And she's like, yeah, Kara, that's not necessarily the truth. And, that's probably not the healthiest thing for you. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh, that's good to know. Thanks for bringing that to my attention.
Yes.
Okay. So, we are right before Thanksgiving and all of the hustle and bustle, which if you ask my kids, they're super confused because we're seeing things and they're like, why are there Christmas decorations up, Mom? This happened, the day after Halloween. They're like, we didn't even have Thanksgiving. And I'm like, yes, it's true. And so the holidays, but they start earlier and earlier every year, which, can be a good thing, but also I think gives me a longer time to be stressed out about the holidays.
Right.
So we are going to chat a little bit about how we can have a better perspective on things when Christmas and Thanksgiving and all of those other holidays this time of year make us a tiny bit crabby. Mm-hmm. So first thing first, me as a mom, we see all of these beautiful pictures on Pinterest. We have visions of our children waking up on Christmas morning with matching pajamas and getting, that perfect picture under the tree. We see these beautiful Christmas trees that are decorated and are just absolutely lovely. And while those are great, it's really hard when those visions that you had thought were going to be your Christmas do not happen. And we get stuck in this cycle of, not being able to accept what reality is. So can you give us some tips as far as, how do we accept imperfection?
Yeah. I think one of the first things to really kind of think about as you move into the season is remembering that movies are movies, social media is just pictures. I can show you the cleanest part of my house, or I can show you the messiest part of my house. And I can tell you that when I get ready to take a picture of my kids, we scoot everything and we go to this. Actually, most of my pictures are in front of this like one door because that's where it's the cleanest, right? And so I think we have to remember that things are very staged, right? Filtered, staged, whatever words you want to use. I also blame like the Hallmark holiday movies. Like those are a really big thing and they're super fun to watch. And they are so unrealistic. And so even just if you're one of those moms who are like checking off your movie list, how many movies have I watched? Make sure that you balance that with some other movies, maybe like Home Alone or National Lampoon's Holiday, Christmas Vacation, because that's just, it is like, there is no such thing as perfect. I think part of the reason that we're drawn to Pinterest and, some of the social media or even like Instagram and even maybe sometimes we're drawn to taking pictures ourselves and posting those is because we want so badly for things to be perfect, for things to be just right. And I think it's even maybe more so for moms. We want things to be just right for our kids. In our minds, we get this twinkling lights in our eyes. I want my kid to remember, when he's 20 or when she's 30, I want them to look back and remember this, perfect Christmas. And so then we really just kind of set the bar high for ourselves. And then we start to really have disappointment and even resentment when things don't go as planned.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I think about is, and I love that we're doing this early enough that we haven't even reached Thanksgiving yet, because we can set the bar a little lower from the start. So I think it should just plan on things are not going to go perfectly. They're just not. I was reading through just some different ideas and things for holiday stress. And this isn't specific to the holidays, but I found this kind of this discussion, this article where it talks about expecting life to always turn out the way you want leads to disappointment. When those unfulfilled expectations involve the failure of other people to behave the way you expect them to, that disappointment really leads to resentment. And so I think the other thing to remember is you are not the sole person participating in these holidays. If you're hosting or if you're going to a family member's or whatever you're doing for the holidays, that perfection that you're expecting means that you have to act just perfectly and have everything just perfectly. And not only that, even if you could manage that, that means everybody else coming over or everybody else at the holiday event is going to have to act perfectly as well.
Right. And I don't know about you, but I mean, if you have toddlers, they're obviously not going to act perfectly. And even as our children get older, I think, we have these even higher expectations for them because, this is what we expect out of you. And we really lose sight that, these people are kids. They are still growing and developing, and we need to cut them a little slack and ourselves slack as well.
Yes. And they aren't, depending on how young they are not necessarily looking at Pinterest or Instagram and saying, oh, I just hope my Christmas is like this. My kids want all of the Christmas decorations on the bottom where they can take them off and play with them as toys. Like that's, that is not Instagram perfect, because in my head, what Christmas looks like is completely different than what Christmas looks like in their head. They are just experiencing the holiday with their family. There's not these big expectations of this is what it's going to look like. And I think that to some degree, this is a great Christmas coming out of, some of the quarantining and things we were doing last year. This is a great Christmas to really, tap into some of that like resiliency that we know that kids have, and also for ourselves to kind of cut some of the fat out of what we do for Christmas, right? Like even if it's gift giving. I know with my kids, we've talked a lot about gift giving this year. We're going to try to stick maybe a little bit closer to a number rather than just this unopened season of giving. Does that make sense? Right. So I think it's remembering, the brain development of where your child is at. They're not looking at perfection. They just want to spend time with you.
Right. Absolutely. And I think, you talk about resiliency. And I think last year, of anything, it taught us to really try and focus on, the things that matter, and to, trim off some of those things that don't really matter for all that much, that, we may put a lot of stock into them, but really, like, who is this important to, and why is it important? Are we just making it important, or is this actually something that really matters?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that that's probably my next thought about managing holiday stress is really kind of keeping in mind what really matters, what really counts during this season. And that's going to be different for different families. But I think that, you mentioned before, just there's a lot of divide right now among people. There's lots of extremes of things going on. And I think we just have to kind of talk about like, what are the important things? And especially when we're around the Thanksgiving table, that's kind of the holiday, I think, that gets the most beef about those holiday discussions that happen around the Thanksgiving table. And I think about that, and I think it's good to remember that no one's going to be converted to your opinion during a fight over Thanksgiving dinner. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. It does not matter how eloquently you make your point. It really, and the long and short of it is that, nobody is going to be converted to your viewpoint based on the things that you are shouting at them over Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Do you have some tips as far as, when things start to get really like stressful or tense in those conversations that you're having, where somebody has a different point of view,
Yeah.
what are some things that can help us, kind of stay grounded and to focus?
Yes. Yeah. So the number one thing that I can think of is kind of going back to this idea of mindfulness. And so mindfulness kind of gets a little bit, it becomes a little bit of a buzzword these days. And so I want to just sort of define it for how we'll talk about it in this conversation. But I really look at mindfulness as like bringing your attention to the present. And then not just that, but then accepting the moment just as it is. The present is the only reality. And so anytime, even now, as we think about the holidays, all of that's made up because we have no idea what that's actually going to look like. And so we are really kind of in like movie land or imagination world as we think, even now, as you and I talk about the holidays and Christmas and that, like, it's just projection. It's not reality. The only reality we have is right now, today, right? And so we want to kind of stick with that. And so being not judgmental about some things is just kind of giving yourself the grace that things are the way they are. So your family's not perfect. So the Christmas tree doesn't look perfect. There's a little bit of like radical acceptance that we have to have for the imperfections. And then some of what we can commit to is our values and things that we maybe can change. And that's really only our own behavior. So I can't change, what Uncle Bill's going to say about politics at the Thanksgiving table, but I can control how I'm going to respond. And so some of the ways that we can be mindful in those really difficult moments is really just to sit back and tune into your five senses. So number one, you do not have to participate in any conversations you don't want to participate in. It is okay for you to just back up and maybe tune out a little bit. I think it's helpful to get both feet on the ground, just to kind of really ground yourself. I really think that it can be very helpful to, if you can, sort of say out loud or just whisper to yourself the date and the time to bring you back to this very present moment, and take a few deep breaths. And when we're taking those deep breaths, really focusing on a longer exhale. When we're exhaling, that is what connects to our heart to say, we are safe, it's okay to calm down. So when you're breathing in, just really long exhale out a couple of times. Drinking water can also be helpful. So perhaps next to your wine or anything else that you sort of, or Diet Coke, whatever that you have that might, may not be so helpful with the anxiety piece of things, or maybe it will. It's good to have some water next to you. Just 4 ounces of water can help your anxiety, your body process anxiety better, your brain process anxiety better. Step outside if you need to, or step into the bathroom and put some cold water on your face. It kind of will bring you back to the right now. And then again, going back to tuning into those 5 senses, what can you hear around you? What can you see? What can you touch? What can you smell? What can you taste? Just really focusing on this moment right here.
No, that is awesome. Like, as you are bringing up these tips, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about, what will this look like for me to implement these things, at my family gatherings, these holidays.
And I think too, deciding before you go what does really matter.
Mhm.
And I hope that what really matters is love and connection. And if you sort of decide that before you go, I think sometimes in really stressful situations, it can be helpful just to kind of put your hand over your heart and just remember, like, love and connection, love and connection. These are the things that are important. And even if they're not important to everybody else, that doesn't mean they can't be important to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're not all going to have the same things that are important to us. We're not all going to have the same, things that really, are the things that ground us and that really kind of make us who we are. And so it's important to, remind ourselves of what those things are, but also remind ourselves that it's okay for those to not be the same thing for everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, Vicki, if you had 3 things that you would want for us to keep as goals as we're going into this holiday season, what would you tell yourself?
So I think kind of going through some of the things we talked about, right? Keep what really counts first, right? Like kind of keep that in your mind first. Expect imperfections. The holiday season is not some magical season that everything goes perfectly, even though all of the movies and market media and all of those things tell us that's what it is. That is not what it is. So keep a reality check on your expectations. And then, I think it's so important to just be kind. And being kind is twofold. Being kind to yourself is important. And some of those things we just talked about is really showing kindness to yourself.
Yeah.
Not only when you're dealing with or going to extended family who maybe you don't see very often, you're not sure how that's going to go, but also in your own home for Christmas. Showing kindness to yourself that you're doing, I think reminding yourself, like, I'm doing the best I can. Most of us in the moment of whatever is that's going on, if we really checked in with ourselves, even if it didn't go perfectly, if we look, either we're looking back or we're looking in the moment and we say, am I, or did I do the best that I could? 99.9% of the time, the answer is yeah, I did. For what was going on in the moment, for the tools that I had, I was doing the very best that I could, and let that be enough. Remembering that our kids are not expecting perfection, and showing kindness to ourselves is modeling and teaching our kids in the now and in the later that they don't have to be perfect in order to be loved, and neither do we. And so I think that that's a really important part of kindness towards ourselves.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's good. Those are
yeah.
all great things for us to keep in mind and to remember as we go into a very busy time.
Yeah. Can I talk about kindness to others real quick too?
Yes, please.
I think that might be important to talk about. So one of the things that I think is important about being kind to others is, going back to some of those conversations, or going to the store during this time, trying to find a parking spot, some of those just rush things that happen even outside of our families, just in, everyday interactions with people. I think it's good to remember in the being kindness to ourselves and to others is that how other people treat you says more about what's going on in their lives and their hearts than it does what's going on in your life and your heart. So then on the flip side of that, how we treat others is totally on us and on our hearts. So there isn't the holidays are making me feel this way. We've got to get back to, again, what really matters, which is love and connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that is a great perspective that I really haven't heard put that way before, but you're absolutely right. When it is great to think about, how what's going on in your life, how that is reflecting upon others, and how that is treating the people around you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for these tips and for things to think about as we're moving into the holiday season. Vicki, if people are wanting to connect with you or to make an appointment to spend some more time with you, what is the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, probably by phone would be good. So my number is 515-992-6355. That would be one good way to get a hold of me. I think I actually maybe do have an official website. My practice is a private practice. I'm the only employee. And so, sometimes I say like it's held up by like bubble gum and popsicle sticks, which means like some of those formal things that you might see from other agencies. I don't necessarily have. So I don't know that I have like a good face or a web page, but I do have the only thing I really know how to do is like Facebook. So if you wanted to type in Bright Light Counseling, I do have a Facebook page where I try to update and just kind of put different thoughts on there every once in a while, and different resources, things like that. So that would be another way to get a hold of me as well.
All right. Well, thank you again so much today,
Yes.
Vicki.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.